How you doing, Bob? Another week for Citizens for Better Broome podcast.
Andy, good to be with you. And folks,
Welcome.
thanks for listening. Here we are again, recording just after our meeting. We just had our April monthly meeting, which is the first Monday of the month. Actually,
if you're
looking ahead, May, the meeting is the second day of May. It's first Monday. So happy for anyone and everyone to join us at Thursdays at 6:00. We talk about a variety of subjects. Had a nice turnout last night. Good to see everybody, and got a few things kind of on the front burner, which we'll get to. I know Andy's got some things and I've got a couple. Just a reminder about checking us out on Facebook, Citizens for Better Broome. BobKingsley.com is where I post a lot of blogs, mostly things that have to do with local government and that kind of thing. So if you want to stop in there and like us, if you like us, and post things if you don't, and we'll try to get back to you. What do you got for us to lead off, Andy?
Well, a couple things here. Ithaca recently finalized a plan to overhaul their police force, and they are hiring 5 new unarmed community responders with more civilian oversight. They're not going to cut any of the existing police force. It's going to be curious. There's a lot of talk across the country about these, let's call them unarmed community responders. How do you go into a home when the husband and the wife are beating the heck out of each other and they're both armed?
Let's not forget, Andy, that when this whole defund the police movement started right around the time that America burnt last year after George Floyd incident, that Ithaca formed a committee to study this. And one of the members of their committee was a cop killer, a guy who sprung from prison after killing a cop. Everybody thinks this is noble. This is good. This is what kind of a system, what kind of a world do we live in?
Yeah, this is terrible.
Where number one, that person's even out in the public ever, right, let alone on a committee to decide policing. How ironic, how demonically ironic that is.
Well, time will tell.
Ithaca gets exactly what they deserve, and that is some bad outcomes here. Not that I wish anybody any harm, but I think the only way these crazy bastards are going to see the light is for something tragic to happen. Then they'll clutch their pearls and scream at the sky. We'll start from a new perspective. But until then, I think they've got to have the rose color knocked off their glasses.
Well, and that dovetails into this other argument where the state budget is still tied up. And to Hochul's credit, she's holding out, re-examining the bail law that was passed that's allowed. And we've talked about this many, many times on our episodes. But it also is telling New York State legislature and the Senate really is not looking out after the welfare, especially of New York City and the state of New York, by allowing this bail reform and not having any reform. And that's what we're seeing here. And hopefully the governor will hang tough in there, be able to get some change.
Yeah, this whole idea of linking criminality with wealth is just sort of a very, very dubious connection. Of course, people who are less wealthy are going to be engaged in property crimes. I mean, if you're stealing something from someone that you could otherwise buy, you'd have to be a little crazy. So, of course, people engaged in burglaries and shoplifting and these kind of things are going to have less wealth than someone else. And of course, the people with the wealth aren't necessarily burglarizing houses or shoplifting. So it's a dubious argument that there's a relationship there that should be tethered to an outcome. As a result, like anything else, 20% of people do most of the work in any organization. It's true in the criminal world.
Exactly.
There's a lot of criminals, but about 20% of them are the ones wreaking havoc on most of society. They're the very active full-time criminals.
Right.
And these are the ones we want to keep incarcerated because
and the violence.
And the violence and just the repetitive nature of, look at this smash and grabs going on. And there was one the other day in Walmart where the guy had wire cutters. The store employers are gathered around him. He's got wire cutters. He cuts the wire on the expensive hand tools and walks out of the store with one under each arm. One employee, to his credit, knocked one out of his hand, and the guy, just proud as could be, didn't even try to hide his face in the camera. What kind of world is that? That's Sodom and Gomorrah stuff.
There has to be some change. Society, the powers to be are so concerned about windmills and solar panels and electric cars. who's going to drive all these things around? You're afraid to get out of your house because criminals are running the asylum.
Yeah, Andy, there was two articles in the Wall Street Journal the other day that happened to be positioned on the same page. That was the third page of the A section, so it's right up in the front of the paper.
Mhm.
Two big full-size articles. The one on the right was announcing that scientists had finally completed the human genome.
Okay.
So we've completed the crossword puzzle. It is the human being. Okay, to the left and lower from that article was another one that said the United States had decided that on passports, there could now be a non-binary X as opposed to simply declaring female and male. So it just was so striking to me that on the one hand, we have dug into God's workshop and, broken the code on humanness. And on the other hand, we have decided to erase from humanity that which is biological truth. And that is that there are men and there are women, boys and girls, Y chromosomes, X chromosomes. And those two things together, just to me, having a biblical background in my life, I see that as terrible, terrible indication of where we are.
Well, a lot of laws, a lot of legislatures across the country are demanding and passing laws. Men and women cannot compete athletically together, and where other states allow it, as in New York State.
Yeah, this whole thing has done more to unravel good things in society. Back in the 70s, you had the Title IX stuff where it was incumbent on any educational institution that received federal funds to provide equal accommodation to the boys and the girls in athletics.
Right.
And that led to a lot of really good things. And now you've got this mixing of the worlds in such a way that it's got to demoralize the hell out of these young girls and young ladies. I can't imagine what those class swimmers in competing at the collegiate Division I level, having to go against a person who was a man all his life.
Right, exactly.
And is now converting. I thought the smartest thing those girls could have done was to get up on the starting blocks, every one of them. And when the gun went off, stand there. Make that guy swim by himself.
Right.
That would be the best optics there could ever be, right? All the girls standing on the block and this guy swimming his ass off all by himself. That would have got so much play. It would have been unbelievable. And I think the girls missed an opportunity to make a statement there because you know what's happened, Andy? They're cowed into silence by self-censorship.
Exactly. Well, maybe we're going to see some changes here with Elon Musk buying 9% of Twitter. And that's a shout out to the rest of the country that the wokeness, maybe it's well intended to start off with and fairness in the country. But what's happened is that it's picked up a life of its own.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting to see what his intention is there, because Twitter stock went up 30%, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly.
After that announcement. A lot of these executives in these high tech companies, man, they make all their money on stock options because it's a way to beat income tax, because the capital gains tax is less than their income tax in some cases if they're high earners. So they take their earnings this way. He could crash the executive, the C-suite of Twitter by simply selling half that 9.2 billion, or I'm sorry, 9.2% of the company.
Right.
And throw these guys to the wolves. The other thing he could do is demand rule changes. Imagine if he said, I think we should let Trump back into Twitter. Oh my God, their heads would explode.
Sure. And now some of the internet geeks, that code writers and such for Twitter, taking a stand. They're leaving Twitter. They're quitting. Well, gosh, go right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, speaking of earning extra money, Brian Benjamin, lieutenant governor, has been caught up in a grant rigging scheme in his district in New York City. New York politics, you just can't get away from it.
Say it ain't so.
So it's going to be interesting if what Hochul does. They're probably not going to deal with this until she'll probably deal with this after the budget is completed. But this guy, this is going to be a pale over her shadow if she continues. And if where there's smoke, there's fire, especially in New York City when it comes to fraud and public officials looking the other way.
Now, it
we'll
used
look
to
and
be,
see.
it was called 3 Men in a Room, right, Andy, when they did the budget?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if we
Right.
go back into recent history, aren't all three of those men we're thinking about either in jail or had to resign in disgrace, or both?
It
I'm
goes,
thinking of Dean Skelos,
right?
in jail, if not probably sprung by now, but he was in jail along with his son. Andrew Cuomo, of course, the prince,
Hmm.
had to leave in disgrace.
And
And
Silver, Sheldon,
yeah, and
Sheldon Silver.
Shelley Silver, these
Mhm.
guys selling access, all in jail or should be. That's a pretty good indication of where these folks are heading. This is just a warm up for the felonious behavior that probably happens behind closed doors, and they hope they can cover up.
Well, as far as we're talking about New York City, the Eric Adams, the mayor, the new mayor that is of New York City, said in a interview that he is a wartime general and that he is tired of New York City looking like a laughing stock for all the crime and the indiscriminate crime that just walking down a sidewalk where somebody tees off on somebody else. And he's bringing back the anti-crime unit, which was something that Giuliani did to pound away at this, the crime and the violence and what's going on. And we'll see. We'll see how it makes out.
Bring back stop and frisk and bring back broken window theory. Those are all the things that Giuliani brought to New York that made the place habitable. And of course, when you stop doing it, you get more of what you had that you were afraid of before. So, Adams trying to be politically astute and serve 100 masters when he's really serving one, and that's himself. Hey, Andy, real quick on the local stuff. Want to remind people, meeting in the town of Vestal, public hearing on this proposed development up on Bun Hill Road, 500 and some odd bedrooms that'll be mixed use, so they say, but it'll probably be student housing. Been on the drawing board for a long time. John Schaefer, the town of Vestal supervisor, has railroaded this thing through, rammed it through against the wishes of a lot of people. There were some 700 folks signed a petition against it. He said, I know better than you do, waived environmental things, did everything wrong. As a matter of fact, the town was lost in a recent legal case where they were sued and they won, and the group won. Vestal was slapped back, and they've just announced they're going to do it all over again. So if you want to go and watch government in action in a way that will make you want to vomit, I suggest that you join us April 27th. That's a Wednesday at yet to be determined, because people are asking for the venue to be enlarged, because this guy Schaefer is famous for trying to ratchet down attendance to 3 or 4 people and then not do a Zoom meeting so he can operate in the dark. And we'd like to shine a little light on this process. So please join us in Vestal, even if you're not a resident. And let's just observe how government works when nobody's paying attention to it.
Well, on that note, I think we'll finish up for this week. Remind everybody, as you just said, that this meeting is important for self-government on April 27th.
Yeah, please join us there. And in the meantime, look for any updates we have. We'll post on our Facebook page what the venue will be, because we're hoping to have it changed from the Vestal Town Hall meeting room, which will only seat a dozen, to perhaps an auditorium somewhere where hundreds can pack into this place, and it can be demonstrated to this little dictator in Vestal that he shouldn't be running under cover of darkness, and this thing should have light shed on it. And we'd like to make that happen. So folks, please keep paying attention to our page. We'll try to update it when we have more information. We don't have it now. Citizens for a Better Broome, bobkingsley.com for the written material. Andy, thank you. Folks, thanks for listening. And we will check you next week.
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.